have a certificate of acceptability or occupancy for buildings once we've designed them and constructed. So you have to do a fire safety certificate to get a certificate of occupancy, and then you can start occupying the building and you receive your utilities. Now, most of us uses diesel for our daily operations, and you need to register those ones as well, and then you get a flammable store certificate. So those are two different types of certificates. However, the problem with our authorities is that they don't look at risk holistically, and they are single-minded with the mitigations of it. But each industry is different, and it's not so easy to practically apply the rules that they have set. For example, in our environment, especially mine, when we deal with grain, you can't have sprinklers in a building, and you can't mix water with the building. And on the other hand, it's just too expensive for the type of risk that we're dealing with. There's many other options. Now, to speak to the municipality itself is a very big challenge because they don't communicate effectively. Sometimes the websites are off, so you can't find the legislation you need. When you visit the offices, they're not there, or their numbers aren't working. I'm not speaking for all of them, only for some of them that I've been dealing with. And I'm assuming that most of us are experiencing the same problems. Therefore, we hope that y'all can give us some advice or guidance. And perhaps as an industry, we can see how we can solve this problem for all of us within the industry. So, Jock, I think you can go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I've got a very easy solution to deal with municipalities, but unfortunately I can't say it. I might go to jail. So yeah, sorry about that. But what I can do is I can try and give you guys some good knowledge based on definitions. Again, some general things that I found throughout different municipalities that I've looked at, the bylaws. And the advice I gave before, and I'm actually very grateful to Michelle for asking a question, the advice that I was touching on before about having that communication going. As Yoppie is mentioning, every time you visit the website and it's down, take note of that. Take a photo, take a screenshot. Every time you go to the department itself, or if you are visiting the municipality's office and the people you are looking for is not there, did you book a meeting? Did you send an email? Did you tell them you were coming? Now that you are there, take a photo. You are there. They are out. People are saying you're not there. Have a document ready where the document literally just says, I am seeking knowledge on how to comply, but the person who is responsible for this knowledge is not present for me to see. This is my third attempt. And then you give the paper for someone there to sign. All of these things, if you get taken to court for any of this stuff, again, government doesn't expect you to solve the problem. They just expect you to report the problem. They will sometimes punish you for trying to solve the problem in the first place. So having the documentation of these attempts, guys, are very, very important. If you do stop there and they're not there, take a selfie, put it on Twitter. I mean, these days, everyone is on social media. Any proof that you can gather that you have done what you were supposed to do, that is a point in your direction. The more papers your lawyer can pull out in a courtroom, the better it will be for your case down the long run. It's very easy for them to say that you are non-compliant. It's very difficult for them to argue that you are trying to be compliant, but they are not giving you the rules. They are not reciprocating. Their website is down. Their systems never work. They don't answer their phone calls, so on and so on. Say, listen, I want to comply right now. I've got the resources for it. I'm just waiting for one of your people to be available to come and have a look. And that could be where the pain comes in. Because for all the criticisms we've got about the legal system in South Africa, I would say that a fair number of the regulatory judges concerning the things that we're doing here, as far as I can see, are actually fair, that they are not siding with government just automatically. So that would be my advice on that. Based on everything I'm going to be teaching you guys, please do document. If you're having any difficulties whatsoever, document it. Put it on paper. Paper is forever. Okay, so let's deal with flammable storage. Let's get back to that one there. A flammable good is an item that, under the current circumstances of negative reaction, can cause a fire or explosion that may result in death, damage, and contamination. So this goes back to that definition of chemicals that I was talking about before. Now, the unique thing about flammable storage is that it's right there in the name. When we were talking about dangerous goods before, it counted, yes, explosions and fire, but it also took stuff into account such as oxidizing agents as well as caustics, radiations, poisons. So flammable storage is looking specifically at your fuel sources, whatever you might be using, or any other chemicals that might also just happen to be flammable. But that is the criteria they're looking at. Is fire involved? As a result of its possible impact, certificates of compliance, or CoCs, need to be applied for and maintained. So once you have a CoC, it's just a question of maintaining it. But what it sounds like to me, between the conversations that I've had with Yapi, that a lot of people are struggling with actually just getting the certificate in the first place. And this could be, again, because of government, but also because we don't know the rules ourselves. We don't know how to implement them properly. And unfortunately, I'm going to need more than 3 hours just to go through all the different bylaws that are there in the hundreds of conditions. I found a municipality where flammable goods storage is acceptable if you just simply build a cabinet that is about 2 or 3 meters in size. How are you going to store thousands of liters in there? And then I asked that question, and I'm still waiting for a response. So I'm feeling your pain on that one, guys, that they're just not coming back to us. But then again, how can we comply if we don't have clarification? Further, it says it's the duty of the employer under General Safety Regulation 4 or GSR 4 of the OSH Act to create and maintain such a space in the interest of health and safety. Now, for those of you guys who do have a safety officer on the payroll, if you are a safety officer yourself, that GSR 4 is a very good one to go get yourself orientated with, because it is what creates the necessity for the CoC. It's not the conditions under which it is applied. Unfortunately, again, those are very varied and complicated when you dig down into it. But this is where it says the employer has the responsibility. So it will outline for you the criteria under which you can apply for a certificate of compliance, even though it's not giving you the details directly. Now, I will warn you guys, if you do not have any safety knowledgeable people or anything like that within your business, do ask a lawyer about this, if maybe you have a family lawyer or business lawyer that you can communicate with, because GSR in particular is very hectic on, as we call it, legalese, the specific language that lawyers use. So if you don't know how to interpret that, might be a very, very difficult read, not something to pick up at 5 minutes before bed. Then other legal sections and local bylaws make summarizing these requirements difficult, but there are some common requirements that I'm going to go over now. Again, there are other sections that are applicable as well. Some of you guys might have heard about ISO, for example, to be ISO registered 9001 or 14001, some stuff like that. It's not only construction sites that are applying for that, but also warehouses, factories, any storage areas that you might be dealing with. They can also apply to ISO. And normally, if you are applying for ISO and you have ISO registration, that normally means you automatically be given your certificates of compliance, because all these things are building on top of one another. So there are other things you can look at that'll give you that, but the bylaws is what makes it difficult. Individual municipalities that are making individual laws that will work in one place, but it will not work somewhere else. It'll work for one industry, but not for another one. So here's basically what I could find that is commonplace for most CoCs. So first of all, regardless of bylaws, compliance of such spaces and the CoCs attached is handled and regulated by the local fire brigade and issued by the then appointed fire chief. So one thing to keep in mind, I mentioned this before with the fire department, you can refer to them for knowledge, but under most of the municipalities that I saw, the fire chief is actually the one that's responsible for at the very least, creating the proper circumstances necessary for a CoC to be issued out. So they would have to have an approval. This is because the law requires the fire department to be aware of any flammable storage that is taking place within their district. So again, have good relations with them, talk to them. If you're struggling with the municipality itself, with their officers, the fire brigade tends to be very happy to help, because again, if they help, you guys are safe. If you are safe, they have to fight less fires. So it's in their best interest to assist you best they can. Then, the construction of such spaces also need to be approved by a municipal engineer, who will require the plan be approved by them, as well as stopping points in phases of the construction for their approval. So this is another problem. The engineer for the municipality themselves can be one individual or a group of individuals in some cases, but they're not always available. So you could have a plan that is ready to go. You've got all the raw materials, you've got your builders waiting, And then 4 weeks goes by before the engineer decides to grace you with their presence and tells you you forgot a comma on one of the measurements, and now you have to restart the whole process from the start. So this is a little bit of an issue. This is, again, why I'll refer back to the fire chief. Although they are not engineers, builders, or architects by any measure, they have seen a fair few of these COCs be issued and such spaces be approved. So they will be able to give you a general guideline of what you are looking at in order to get that approval from the engineer. There's nothing we can do about them taking forever to get to us, but there is something we can do about getting the correct approval while they are there. Further on, the materials used for construction must be fire resistant and be able to sustain its structure through 2 hours of continuous burning at least. The door must open outwards and ventilation is required if fume buildup is even a light risk. So again, this is one I found that is relatively common between the bylaws. If my structure were to be set aflame under the worst case scenario, so in other words, full storage, all the storage containers are leaking, somehow the ignition happens. We don't know how it happens, but the worst possible scenario happened. It must last for 2 hours. Then the building collapses. So if it will collapse after that, how do I estimate that? Again, this is where the engineer comes in. Your own personal building engineers or designers can plan for this type of stuff. The door was a little bit tricky where it says the door must open outwards. Well, now, why is that the case? This is so that anyone is trapped inside can open the door and escape. Now, obviously, if the door opens inwards, they can still just open the door. But if there are 5 people pushing against the door, the guy in the front will not be able to pull the door back and they will all be trapped. This is also for the second reason of an explosion. If an explosion were to happen, we don't want that door to create resistance. If the door opens inwards, it's going to lean into the frame. And if explosion happens, the door and the frame as one chunk will be blown out and could catastrophically kill multiple people. So if the door blows outwards, then it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely to be blown off its hinges. And at that point, it is safer for us to deal with it. It allows, again, that violent force to come out. So there's an evacuation reason that I found, and there is also an explosion reason that I found. But the door has to be able to open outwards. It also says ventilation is required if fume buildup is even a light risk. Now, again, how do we determine something to be a light risk? This would be up to your risk assessor. If they determine that this is something that could happen, like, for example, petrol releases petrol fumes, as we know, a buildup of those fumes in those areas is likely to cause a fire or an explosion. So it would be a good idea to have some kind of ventilation system that will remove those fumes. Through a little bit of the research that I've done for the silos you guys are dealing with, as Yapi mentioned, the grain silos and stuff like that, I found that this is actually a problem internationally, where the older system of venting silos to get rid of dust explosions used to be the standard system and is still a widely used system around the world. But because we still have dust explosions out of silos, and sometimes people will get killed in that. I recall from when I started doing training, there was a silo that a company was dealing with. I'm not going to name names, but basically they were storing sugar in there, and the sugar created an explosion, but the quantity in that case ensured the heat of that sugar. Anywhere it landed caused fire. Any person it landed on, they'd melted into their skin. So we have to be mindful that there is a reason why they're so strict on this. So whatever system you can use to negate the fume buildup, it could be an extracting system that takes the fumes elsewhere. It could be an induction system that puts oxygen into the area in order to thin out the fume. But if it's in a case of dust, for example, that exact same system would increase the risk. So you would have to go check what fumes you're dealing with to see how you're going to either ventilate or dilute this possible solution from creating a fire. Another common requirement would be that all flammable liquids must be stored separately and be adequately labeled to ensure no confusion in their handling. A full file of 16-point STSs must be available close to the store in order to ensure any person who might need it has access to it. Now, one point on that where it should be stored separately and labeled appropriately, I've commonly find an incident report when I go do forklift training that happens with forklift operators, where they will take a 2-liter Coke bottle to carry a little bit of diesel with them on a construction site because they might be far away from the depot or where they can refill. So that 2-liter bottle will then get them back to the depot. But then people mistake that for Coca-Cola because the label says Coca-Cola and it looks like Coca-Cola, and then they get a mouthful of diesel. So because the labeling is incorrect, it would now be a safety breach. Now imagine that on the scale where you guys are storing your substances. Someone takes the wrong nozzle, someone removes the wrong pipe, someone makes the wrong connection, someone opens the wrong valve. If you don't have the correct labeling for these systems, then it's very easy for confusion to happen during the handling process and for accidents to occur. So minimization would be to highlight signage, highlight internal training of your own systems. And if something seems not clear, that's a gap for us to fix. The MSDS file or SDS file is a collection of all SDSs for the storage that you guys are dealing with, right? I mentioned that document a few times now. They must be printed out hard copy in a file close to the store. Not in the store, mind you, because unfortunately, if the store is on fire, it doesn't help the SDSs are on fire. But this fills the same role as that orange document box we were talking about during transportation. That in an emergency, if in the worst case scenario, all the experts are off site or they've been killed or something has occurred, that the emergency responders have the ability to actually go for those files and learn about those chemicals before they fight it. Again, these documents are not for us. We know this. They are for other people. They don't know this. Then access to the store must be controlled along with procedures for appropriate staff in general housekeeping of waste materials and prevention of work that might cause sparks or ignition of any kind. Again, this is a general simple rule, but very difficult to implement. How do you control access? Do you have a padlock on the door, for example? Okay, who's in control of that padlock? Whose responsibility is it to sign in or sign out the quantities of what's being removed? If it's not something as simple as a tin or a bottle, maybe you take an entire nozzle, entire vat of something. Okay, you're bringing in a forklift, you're bringing in a truck. Who's got access over these machines? Who's just allowed to go wherever they need to go? What is your access control? It also says there general housekeeping and waste materials. So when we are unwrapping something, we've got a bunch of plastic laying around. Where does that go? If we're dealing with pallets and those pallets get broken, where do they get stored? Because again, broken pallets might be contaminated. We want to make sure that any waste that we are generating in the process, even just a scrap piece of paper or a candy wrapper that someone throws carelessly to the side, will not be responsible for our entire storage area blowing up. So how are you managing those systems? And then lastly, it says the prevention of work that might cause sparks of ignition of any kind. Are your guys grinding or welding anywhere close to it? It doesn't matter if the sparks are hitting the brick wall. That is the brick wall of the flammable storage, and it's unacceptable. So they don't want anything there. But this is not just work, guys. It's not just welding and grinding. It could be, again, static electricity, general maintenance of electrical systems. Maybe you've got an air conditioner in there. That thing is electrically alive. Maybe you've got a light switch in there. That thing is electrically alive. Where is your likely source of ignition going to come from, and what are we doing to prevent that from happening? Even something as careless as a cigarette flicked through the wrong window will cause an explosion. Then appropriate signage also needs to be in order to easily identify the space, as well as precautionary measures such as the nearest firefighting equipment and first aid boxes that may be used, along with eye wash stations and deluge showers where necessary. Again, a sign in the eyes of the law is as good as a manager standing there giving the order. So if there's a sign for a helmet and the person walks right past it and doesn't wear the helmet, that is as good as ignoring an order from management, because management had to approve the purchase as well as the mounting of that sign. So ignoring a sign is ignoring a manager. So you could use this to your advantage. Do you have signs at staircases that says use a handrail, and are they using it? Do you have signs that says to wear the full PPE, to close valves, to close taps, to use lockout systems, to remember to return the keys, to remember to complete a document? Any signage like this can be put into place in lieu of you standing there giving orders. So use those signs to your advantage. And if you have a gap, then you've got a gap. When I go do training for first aid, I tend to be the highest qualified person on site. But I will point out to people that I don't know where their first aid kit is simply because I can't see a sign for it. Nothing is pointing me in that direction. So if I'm standing by my flammable goods storage and I look around, I should see where's the signs for an eye wash station or a shower if my risk assessment says it's necessary. Where's the signage for the first aid kit in case someone gets burned or it's a corrosive substance, they get burnt by an acid. Where's the fire extinguishers in order to fight a small fire before it turns into a larger fire? Those signs are very important. Then documentation. Outside of the requirements posed by municipal bylaws, good practice will require safety documentation to be created and maintained by personnel qualified to do so for a period of at least 3 years, unless otherwise stipulated by law. So again, these are those documents we were talking about. And just as they must exist for transportation, they must also exist for storage on site. We must have risk assessments for the storage and use of those chemicals, for onloading and offloading as they are required. We should even have a risk assessment on the parking of vehicles when they are doing their onloading and offloading. Are their wheels chocked? Is the handbrake pulled? Is the keys out of the ignition? Where's the operator during all of this? What's the forklift driver supposed to be doing? How much are they loading? What supervisors are looking at these things? Because if I can ask these questions as someone that's an outsider to you guys, then definitely a labor inspector will be able to ask it. A transport inspector might be able to ask it. Then relevant appointments. Who's appointed for what? Who's my first aider? Are they on shift? If not, where's my backup? Do I have night shift? Well, I should also have a first aider there. What about designated firefighters? Where are they? How far away from the area are they to be handled? My safety reps, where are they? So there are different people you can appoint. It's not just supervisors. It's not just managers. There are safety positions that you can appoint. And unfortunately, the more you learn about safety law, the more you start asking questions, the more of these positions you learn about. Not all positions even have to be numbered appointments. You don't need the law to tell you about it. You can have, for example, a storeman. You can have a person who's dedicated to cleanups and spills. You can design documents to appoint people to do specific tasks, but the better question would be, are they available during the hours that are necessary? If they take leave, do you have a backup? So on and so on. Incident reports. So when was the last time we had incidents? Oh, well, my silo never blew up, so I've never had an incident. There are 3 things the law require us to investigate in the due of incidents. You get what's called an incident, where something has occurred and someone got injured or something got damaged. You've got a near miss, where something has happened, but nobody got injured, fortunately. And you've got an undesired circumstance, where nothing has happened, but we can see that it would happen. The easiest way to understand this is think about a brick that's falling on someone's head. An incident is the brick falls and it hits the worker. A near miss is that the brick falls, but it misses the worker, but it still fell. And then your undesired circumstance is seeing that brick being unstable on the roof or the scaffold. It hasn't fallen yet, but I can see that it'll only take a bump and then that brick is falling. That's an undesired circumstance. All 3 of those have to be investigated. If you do not have any incident reports that your workers are reporting, they are not paying attention. There's always something on a site that can be improved. Thus, there's always something on a site that can be reported. Then awareness programs. How much do your workers know about the systems? I mean, you guys are in the meeting, and if I just quickly look at the number, I've got 73 people here. Wow, nice turnout. Congratulations to everyone involved. But how many of these are actually your employees? How much of this knowledge that I'm giving you guys are you transferring over to them? It doesn't help I train my first aider that they must wear gloves when they deal with blood if they don't tell the workers how important it is to report things like HIV or TB whenever it's necessary that the first aider can get infected. I can put all my safety on one person, but that doesn't make a safe site. So what toolbox talks are we having? What meetings are we having? How are we taking the information we have and distributing that? And guys, if you are doing that, even with posters or meetings or training, doesn't matter what, document all of it, because those awareness programs is what government is going to look at to see, okay, your building is safe and you are safe, but what about your workers? Next is the inspection checklists. Everything needs to be inspected. So let's take the extreme example. This is one of the things that I was trained on. If you guys, and hopefully everyone who's in the meeting is sitting down, and I hope you guys are very comfortable, but Did you inspect your chair before you sat down? Because if your chair breaks and you fall, there's a chance, small chance, but there's a chance you hit your head, you break your neck, and you can die. So because there's a chance, sitting on a chair is life-threatening. So where's your chair inspection checklist? If you have one, where's your qualification to be a chair technician? And this is the nonsense of safety. You can take anything and do what I just did with that. This is why we have the difference of hazards and risks. So a hazard can harm you, but a risk is the chances of it harming you. And if the chances are high enough, then we have to do something about it. An inspection checklist is an excellent way for us to see how high that risk is at any given time. You as a manager looking at a forklift inspection checklist might not know what a side shift cylinder is, but you will understand what it means when there's an X next to it on a piece of paper. Your workers are your eyes and ears everywhere on site. So anything, every valve, every operation, every lockout, every machine, every door, every window, everything can have an inspection checklist. It's up to you to create that. And then you use inspections as data points to see where the biggest problems are. Remember, a manager will send a worker for forklift training, but that doesn't mean the manager knows how to drive a forklift. So inspection checklists are very critical for this. Emergency drills. When was the last time you guys did evacuation? According to the OSH Act, we are supposed to have an evacuation once every 6 months, and we need to document our findings. Even if the people were walking into the smoking area, some people went home. Some managers didn't even leave their offices because they are too busy to do this drill nonsense. All that stuff has to be written down, and then we have to make conscious improvements every time we do a drill. Where's our assembly point? Are we taking every necessary precaution? If my assembly point is at the gate, for example, where's my threat coming from? Okay, it's coming from the silo. But what if we've got, let's say, community action, community protests? Wouldn't you say the threat would be at your gate? In which case you would now need a plan B assembly point. So what emergency numbers are you phoning? Who are you going to phone? Are they reliable? Do you have any private services you want to get involved? How well trained are your guys? I mentioned before, the first aiders. Are they coming to the assembly point with their first aid kits? Are the firefighters grabbing the fire extinguishers? If you've got a critical space like the flammable storage, what systems do you have in place to negate exceptionally large fires in that area? And how close are your workers when that happens? Evacuation procedures. What steps do they need to take? What processes do they need to follow? If you've got a worker that, for example, is permanently stationed at your flammable storage, that should be the person we train for firefighting. That should be the person who's got access to the hose pipe and fire extinguishers or any other systems that might be required. What procedures do we have to follow? Again, these have to be written down. It's something that I can point to in a courtroom and say, I've done my job. My worker was supposed to do A, B, and C. And if the worker panicked and they ran away, the worker gets blamed. But if the company never trained that worker, then the company gets blamed. It's a simple point there. So all your procedures need to be written down. And then lastly, your training records. What training have you done with the workers? Not just external training, like, for example, something to get a certificate, like transportation of dangerous goods or hazardous chemical handling. But what are you guys doing internally in order to train your workers? So I might train them how to drive a forklift, but you want to train them on how to drive the forklift in the way you want. I could train them on how to tie bandages, but you know the risk of what's on site, and you might train them on the MSDS so they know what bandages to tie for the case of chemicals, for example. Training is not just external, it's also internal. You guys have a wealth of knowledge. You've been in the industry for a very, very long time. How are you sharing that knowledge in order to keep people safe? Good idea in safety is we say we learn from our mistakes, but that's normally a bad idea. We don't want to learn from our mistakes because mistakes could kill. Learn from the mistakes of others. Emergency response. So who's going to come to help you? Who are you calling? If we are calling police, how far away are they? Fire department. Then we got the paramedics as well. If you're making use of private systems. This would be security companies or private medical institutions such as Netcare 911 or ER24. How far away are they? What is their response time? How will they be able to help you in the case of the nature of the emergency we're dealing with? Because remember, if the flammable storage does go up in flames, touch wood, it doesn't. But if it does, then what's going to happen to the building? Nothing. It will break. It will fall down. Shame. We will build another building. But the people around the area will have burn wounds. They might have chemical burns on them. There might be toxic gases or fumes. We need to look at environmental spillage if this happens. So it's not just the fire that we are dealing with, but everything the fire does around itself. And the old rule is true. I'd rather have it and not need it than the day I need it, but I don't have it. Then your maintenance records. So what are you doing to maintain the structure? This could be everything from, oh, I changed the light bulb, minor maintenance, to I brought out a qualified electrician to check the entire lighting system. That would be major maintenance. The bricks, the condition of the concrete, the area around it. Once you guys have had heavy rain, does anyone look at the foundation? If you've had vandalism, how long does it take to replace windows and things like that? Are you checking the vents for birds, that they're not making nest in that area to block up, that those fumes are coming through? Every little thing you do, even sweeping the floor and taking out the trash, there should be procedures for it, and it should be recorded who is doing it. Even if it's just a register of today it was this guy's turn and he did this and this and this from this time to this time, sign, end of story, that's it. For most businesses, if you pitch up to the gate, there will be a register for a visitor to sign. Your name, who's your contact person, your number, your registration. Not a lot of people know, but that is there for evacuation. So in the case of filling in a record like that, if every visitor can do that, surely my own workers can do that every time they fix something. And surely my contractor can give me a report of everything they've maintained that I'm paying them in order to do it. So those records is, again, a proof of diligence. You are doing what you are supposed to do, what I expect you to do. And if it's not up to the government standard, then you say, okay, I scored 50% because I did something. You want me to score 60%. Let's work together to get that last little bit of 10%. They can't say to you, you lost marks. And if you ask for what, then they say, no, don't worry about it. You just lost marks. They have to tell you where your shortcomings are. That's the unfortunate truth of it. So a maintenance record is a proof, not that you are doing everything correctly, but again, that you are doing something. And that will put a lot of those points on your side as far as a courtroom is concerned. Then let's look at penalization real quick. So penalization is fines, how government punishes people. So endangering the people environment around your operations might lead to penalties and orders being placed upon your business. These can range from fines that might repeat for each day being non-compliant to instance-based fines to stop orders on operations, and even potential court summons and sentencing in extreme situations of hazardous exposure. So they could find a minor problem and they can issue you a fine of 200 Rand. Doesn't sound that much, especially if your company is making thousands, if not millions. But if they say, okay, 200 Rand per day, and they can prove that this has not been done for 2 years, that's well over 700 days times 200. That's going to end up being quite a number. Sometimes it can be instance-based, where the fine will be maximum 15,000 according to the law. It will never be more than 15,000. Okay, but we've determined that there are 3 separate spots on your premises where this is a problem. So that's 15,000 Rand maximum fine multiplied by 3 instances. And then you will be sitting with a 45,000 Rand fine. If they are finding one of your vehicles is non-compliant, they might check the entire fleet. And then if you've got 8 vehicles that are non-compliant, those are 8 instances. They can also put up stop orders. They can basically just stop all your operations pending further investigation, which means that you can't do any production. Your workers can't get paid. The site basically freezes. And this is one of the worst things that could happen. You could also have a court summons, which is normally what happens even if you just want to defend yourself against a fine. You'll be ordered to go make your case in court. And then you can get sentenced if lives were put in danger, or even worse, lives lost. So if you were grossly negligent, we can even start talking about jail sentencing. This is why I spoke about in extreme situations. So everything leading up to this point where I keep talking about save your documents, put it on file. This is all evidence to say, yes, the worst has happened, but this is a freak accident. And it's one thing for you to say it's a freak accident. It's another thing for you to prove you've done what you ought to do. Yes, Yapi.
Hi, sorry. I just want to give everyone the opportunity to ask questions as well. And we have 15 minutes left. Just want to let you know.
We are coming towards the last speed points. We're almost there.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so mostly non-compliance is seen as negligence on the part of the business owner, regardless of their knowledge on the matter, as it is their responsibility to ensure operations pose no harm. Thus, they must seek out this information if it is lacking. You should, having knowledge on what you lack is just as important on having knowledge on how to fix it. You can point out to the inspectors and say, listen, I know this is a problem. We are working on it. Here's my plan. And sometimes they will just take your word for it. Come back a few months later, check if you've done it. So having that knowledge of what you lack is also important. Then training. So training your work staff is important. Ensure continuous reporting, rigorous compliance with company policy, and an informed worker is a safe worker. The more they know, the safer they become. Unfortunately, guys, there's a direct relationship between safety and production. The more safety you have, the less production you have because people are motivated to work slower. And the more production you have, the less safety you have because that implies shortcuts, which then cuts short the procedures they have to follow. So you're going to have to choose one or the other. Do you have high production with high value, but then your people get killed? Or do you have incredible safety, but a very slow workforce? That is where the difference of training comes in. How they do it rather than can they do it. Some training you might want to consider in this field would be incident investigation, first aid and firefighter training, as I mentioned a few times, stacking and storage, safety representative, as required by Section 17 of the OSH Act, risk assessment, hazardous chemical handling, which is a lot of what we're dealing with now, working on heights, if you're working with scaffolding platforms or any form of silo, truck climbing, that kind of thing, as well as any machine licenses, forklift, TLB, front-end loader, any of that type of stuff. Audits and compliance. To comply with your auditor's requirements is paramount to compliance. So the auditor judges you, but remember, they don't work in your industry. They don't know what's going on. So internal checks on previously failed criteria or weak points a business is aware of helps keeps internal consistency and creates a culture of following the rules. Your first audit will always be your worst audit. You are supposed to improve from there. If you scored 80, I don't expect 90. I expect 81. Next audit, 82. And then every audit you are working closer and closer to the general consensus. It's worth remembering that anyone looking for compliance is with learned knowledge, not a fellow business or owner. You either have something in place or you don't. There's no room for explanations. They don't want to hear yes, but or no, but, because when you start explaining, they don't know what you're talking about because they don't work in your industry. They just want a yes. They just want to know. Do you have it? Do you don't have it? So don't be prepared with explanations. They're not going to entertain them. And then auditors work in such a capacity that paperwork and visible signs of safety count for a lot. I need to see you are compliant before I've opened up a file. When I walk into a site, I look for assembly points. I look for first aid kits. I look for a lot of these systems because I can criticize them during my training and point them out as areas of improvement. This doesn't mean that I want to see you fail. I am pointing it out so I can see you succeed. And auditors work with that attitude as well. If they come into site, they need to see you are compliant before they've even opened a document. And that's about all the information to wrap up on. Thank you for your time and your patience. I just want to say a quick special thanks to Fireline Protection Services. They're the ones I got quite a bit of information concerning the firefighting on. VMV Training is obviously the company I work for, which you guys can get our details there. And Lowbrand Consulting, which was so nice as to put me into contact with Yapi and Annalene in order to provide you guys with this information. Again, they're a consulting company. You will find their numbers and everything there attached. So we are left, according to my clock, with 12 minutes. I hope that's enough time. I think we are opening up the floor for questions now for anyone who wants to ask.
Yes, thank you. Kobus, I see you put something there. We are working in agri-insurance, so our risk are fertilizer, pesticides, fuels, and like. We want a list of List of all the UN listing for agri-specific. If there's something like that, I know there's a difference between the different types of fertilizers. I think if you speak to Jock, send him an email there. I'm sure he can provide you with all that. Thank you for the session. Is there any questions from anyone else around the table that we can assist with?
If I could just quickly jump in there by Quibus's question,
Sure.
the UN listings for the specific items that you need. So when you say pesticide, that pesticide has a name. So if you go Google that name and you add UN number right behind the name of that thing, what it's going to do is generate for you a link that's going to take you to the listings of that specific product. Product cannot be sold unless it's registered, so it will be available on the internet. A manufacturer can also be relied upon for the UN number, as they are required to have that to be registered to manufacture. So you can either use the internet, you can talk to your service provider about getting that number, and once you have that number, you can cross-reference with your SANS standards that I've given you guys throughout the training, and that'll give you the general ideas of what you are working with. Hope that answers your question, Quibus.
Thank you. Quibus, are you feeling comfortable?
Oh,
Yes.
very happy to help, Quibus.
Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy. Rian, I'll speak to you. Thank you so much. Hey?
All right, thank you. Is there any questions from anyone else?
Okay. Unless they are typing, I think it's that should be it. If you guys have no more questions, then I say thank you very much for your time and your patience during the session. I hope everyone learned something at the very least. Please feel free to contact my training company if you guys do need anything on that or any detailed legal information. You can contact Lobrand and they will be able to help you guys with that. Thank you once again. Anyone who's got questions, you're welcome to stay behind and put it in the chat. If you don't have a question, you are more than welcome to, or let me rather ask before I say that, Yapi, do you have anything else you want to add to that before they go?
No, I don't. Good luck with the municipalities for everyone.
Just again, guys, one of the things that I do teach is conflict management. So just while I've got people, one rule that is true for everything, whether you're dealing with government, safety people, auditors, your own workers, it doesn't matter what, one rule: if you fight, you lose. So try not to fight with them. Please understand that these are just people that once they are off your site, you will likely never see that one guy ever again. So if you're going to argue and fight with them, it becomes a hostile environment. They're going to be less likely to help you. Remember, the people that are judging you sit with the reasons they are judging you. They've got the rules with them. So if you need to know the rules, it's better to work with your judge than to fight against your judge. So don't fight with them. Take a deep breath, ask for help rather than to ask for forgiveness.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for attending. We look forward to the 12th virtual session. If there's anything specific you would like to discuss at this workshop, you can get into contact with Annalene or myself, and we'll set up another speaker. Thank you all. Have a good day and week further.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers,
Thank you
everyone.
very
Have a
much.
good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.